Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
Welcome back to another edition of Cal's Corner Radio here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. Folks, as I say at the top of each show, because it's true, we cover everything on the show from politics to the paranormal. Let's cut right to the chase tonight and give you an update on the outbreak of the coronavirus. Then we'll switch to an update and some issues regarding the current U.S. presidential election for 2020. All right, let's talk about the coronavirus. As everybody knows, there has been this outbreak of a virus called the coronavirus. It is a variation of the infamous SARS virus that struck in the early millennia. It comes from China, of course. And right now, over 60 countries have reported an outbreak of this virus, at least one person in that country impacted, if not dead. Folks, I don't know how to say this other than to report to you that it's going to get a lot worse before it gets a lot better. That a lot of countries and leaders are doing the right things, but there's only so much that can be done. For example, do you ground all flights worldwide? Would you even want to fly right now? Who knows? There's no simple answer. So it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. It is inherent in the nature of this type of thing. And it doesn't help when you have different regimes. It's not all of them, but some of them are underreporting or misreporting the number of dead, the kind of breakouts that are occurring, and so on. There are even reports now, like in California, where hundreds of people are being at least watched. There's been a few dozen outbreaks, but again, this has an impact of hundreds of people. Weeks went by before some of these people were even tested. Weeks went by before somebody even figured out that they should have been tested. Again, you combine all of these elements and you have what's called collectively a recipe for disaster. You've got different countries racing with vaccines like Israel, the United States. You've got China applying for patents to go ahead and come up with a vaccine. Again, there's all kinds of stuff going on. What is known is that there is no way to contain this thing until a leg up is achieved as far as developing and then implementing a vaccine. And then there's the pesky issue that some people are getting reinfected again, even though they already had it. Either it's with a slightly different mutated variation of it. We're not sure. Again, it's a new type of outbreak in this kind of virus. It is not exactly the same as the SARS. although there are similarities again. Now, in the current issue of the X Chronicles newsletter by Rob McConnell, you will see that there is an article that exposes the origins of this virus. The short version is this. There was basically a little over 500 monkeys. I think the total was 505 who were rounded up from 2 different provinces in China. They were being studied for the virus because they carry it. It's natural for them to do it. It also makes them, deadly living carriers. What happened is bats don't like to be, captured. So, of course, they resist being captured. One apparently bit a lab technician, a scientist there. It bled on him. There was also some urination and defecation that went on. Combine all of that, the scientist was exposed. He was put into quarantine. It apparently wasn't long enough. He went to a meat market. It was only about 900 feet away, and then things got worse from there. There has been a paper that I quote from in the article that cites the main cause of it, and it also recommends that these labs, some of which are connected to a illegal and rogue Chinese biological weapons program, which officially does not exist. The paper recommends that these facilities not be built around areas where there's lots of people. That's common sense. It's kind of obvious when things like this happen. It's like if you have a nuclear power plant downtown, something goes wrong, then of course you can kiss downtown goodbye in any city. It, again, is inherent in the dynamics of this. So to make a long story short, you had President Trump. He says, don't worry, we're on top of it. He has assigned President Pence to deal with this epidemic that has broken out. Again, folks, I'm not trying to be an alarmist. I'm simply saying that it is going to get worse before it gets better. There are some issues and dynamics which have not broken loose yet. Hopefully they won't. But think about this. As I mentioned from day one, what about India? India is next door to China and Russia. Both Russia and China have closed their mutual borders, over 2,000 kilometers worth of common borders. India has shut down a lot of its borders with China as well. But India has not had a huge outbreak of this virus. It's amazing considering the amount of poverty and, of course, lack of hygiene as a rule culturally in society in India. Also keep in mind, again, that Beijing and Delhi, these 2 cities, which are capitals of China and India, they fight each other every year for the right to have the glamorous title of being the most polluted city on the planet. That's just a fact. That type of environment, that type of endemic pollution does not help contain, or let's say it doesn't inhibit the spread of this type of virus or any germs. Again, the level is much higher when you have pollution that shouldn't be there. And you can tell how bad things are in China by comparing the levels of pollution now in some of the cities that have been shut down because of the virus versus the way it was before. You'll see that the pollution levels have dropped by about 50% in some areas because industry has been shut down. When industry gets shut down, not as many coal factories are being burned in China. There is less pollution, and of course the air is better. Again, imagine the trade-off here. That's not quite the way to run an empire, but that's what they're doing. China, of course, is increasing dramatically the number of coal plants, hundreds of them. They're now the world's largest user and producer of coal to generate power. And they're a signatory to the Paris Accord because they say they care about global warming. So go figure. They're trying to have it both ways. Doesn't work, but that's what they're trying to get away with. India's right behind them. They're actively working to be number 2. The United States, of course, is dropping down to 3rd, maybe 4th in coal use in the world. All right, so that's an update. Again, it's going to get worse before it gets better. There's no other way to put it. It doesn't matter how thorough and good these efforts are by different governments. It's already reached a crisis point where the genie has, it's not going to be possible to put it all the way back in the bottle. So we'll see what happens. It's going to reach a point where it kind of stabilizes a little bit before it may go to another level. But right now, things are going to get worse. I'm just being real with you. All right, let's switch subjects now and talk about the U.S. presidential election. What we saw in the last 2 presidential debates with Mike Bloomberg finally present on the platform. In the first debate, it seemed like he really didn't want to be there. He was, let's call it, a low-energy candidate. He really got his you-know-what kicked in the debate, came in last, but the real loser was Joe Biden. he didn't, pull ahead from the rest of the pack. And we've seen this again and again. He has yet to win a single primary. Now, it's possible he may pull out a victory in South Carolina, but that doesn't mean that his campaign has turned everything around. It's actually in very serious trouble. In fact, if it were held today, let's say the nomination for president on the Democratic side, we would have two things. We'd have Bernie Sanders as the nominee, and he would go against, at this point, Donald Trump. At this point, both the nomination for Sanders and the nomination for Trump are theirs to lose. In other words, if Sanders does not become the nominee, it's his to lose. Same with Trump. He has no real viable opposition. Now, what's interesting on the Republican side is Trump either will or won't keep Pence as his running mate. Honestly, if it were me, I would dump Pence, and I'll tell you why. I think that Trump should have somebody like Nikki Haley as VP. Why not? She's awesome. And she's also positioning herself to likely run for the White House in 2024. She is starting to set up the right political advisors, associated with the right super PACs and so on. And of course, she is being bankrolled by the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative think tank, and they're pretty powerful lobbying institute. I do support a lot of her views. I think it was wonderful and refreshing to see her tell the UN to tell it things that it didn't want to hear, like stop Jew hating, quit being anti-Semitic, quit lying to the world and having these so-called councils on human rights and women's rights when there's no women involved. Doesn't make any sense. Quit putting countries like Iran in charge of human rights councils on the UN when they execute homosexuals. Can't have it both ways. So she was a breath of fresh air. Other diplomats would just sit there and they might as well be chewing bubblegum because they really never say anything of substance. That was not the case with her, and it was very refreshing. So if I were Trump, I would say thank you, Pence, for, loyal 4 years, but, let's mix things up a bit. I would bring in Nikki Haley, and you would have the first woman in the U.S. as a vice president candidate, female. That would really bother Hillary Clinton, which I guess on this one example is a good thing. Never hurts to bug her over those kind of reasons. But that's the kind of ticket that I would have if I were Trump. Now, as far as Bernie Sanders goes, I don't know. I don't know who we could have as a vice presidential candidate. Any other candidate running for president on the Democrat side, in my view, horrifies me. I can't think of anybody that I would want to be a VP candidate on the Democratic side. Literally nobody comes to mind. Maybe there's somebody there, beats me. As far as Sanders goes, personally, I want him to win the nomination because he's going to force a very interesting conversation within the party. He may not be able to get anything done that he wants to get done, but hey, we're used to that, right? No matter who's president, the other side always says no, even when the other side is right. It's become that bad. And the conversation that he represents needs to be had. This includes about the deficit, the right of healthcare to be universal for everybody. But it's not, let's become a socialist country. He's not really saying that. And we'll talk about that in a moment after the break, because that has become the rallying cry in the election, which is, don't vote for Sanders because you're supporting socialism if you're doing that. Well, it's not that simple. And again, we'll come back and explain that after the break. Thanks.
Patty Conklin grew up in Brooktondale, New York with a unique ability. Unlike others, she could see how the vibration of words and emotions affected the physical body. She discovered how to release stored emotion and facilitate healing. This began today's Conklin method of cellular cleansing. The private practice grew with tremendous results, as did her reputation. More and more people sought her out, bringing her into the home for healing. She soon realized she could even teach this to others, and they could shift perception and thus prevent illness from occurring. Patty Conklin quickly became a frequent keynote speaker, and she developed a curriculum for teaching the Conklin method of cellular cleansing. For more information, visit pattyconklin.com. PATTICONKLIN, pattyconklin.com, or call 404-474-0086. That's 404-474-0086.
Mission Evolution is dedicated to the well-being of the planet and animals, as well as the evolution of humankind. One major factor threatening all three is increasing toxicity. Heavy metals and other environmental toxins are poisoning our bodies, deteriorating our brains, blocking our spiritual connection, and shortening our lives. Yet these poisons are extremely difficult to remove. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, and I recently became aware of a product created from the marriage of nature and nanotechnology called Vitality. It's formulated from zoolite, whose crystalline structure binds toxins, gently carrying them out of the body. The light is only as clear as the window through which it shines. Clear your body, shine your light into the world. Visit vitalityhappens.com for a 20% discount. Enter code PATHHOME.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
All right, welcome back to the second segment here on Kal's Corner Radio on the X Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. All right, let's talk about the 2020 U.S. presidential election. As I mentioned before, I want Bernie Sanders to win the Democratic nomination because no matter what happens, although I'd love to see a Trump-Sanders debate, one side would bury the other in facts and statistics. The other guy would bury it in sound bites. That would be hilarious. Anyway, I'd like to see them debate. Sanders is forcing a series of issues to a head, which the other politicians are ignoring. They wouldn't even be talking about if Bernie Sanders was not in the race. Now, let's start by talking about what I call the S word, socialism. I don't like socialism. I think history has proven that socialism does not work. But it doesn't help people trying to understand what's really going on regarding that word, what people are meaning when they use it and misuse it, when the people who banty it around like it doesn't really mean anything, or they keep moving the goalposts. So let me break down for you what socialism really means and why the current debate about it is kind of pathetic. We'll come back to that in a moment. Socialism simply means that the government, I repeat, the government controls all essential choke points in a country's economy or in that nation. What I mean is they control the energy, they control communications, they control radio, TV, the press, they control the electricity that you use to heat your home. They control regulations and prices and foods, even property. Extreme examples of socialism have shown themselves to be things like communism. When you combine communism with totalitarianism and socialism, again, you end up with socialistic governments, which are dictatorships, okay? Now, this is not to say that all socialist countries are dictatorships. It's not that simple. But you have to come back to a key definition here, because here's where it gets convoluted in today's debate. Once again, socialism is when the government controls all essential choke points for a country, okay? Now, I'll give you a real example. When I moved to Europe after the fall of communism, I lived in the Czech Republic for 10 years. That country was privatizing from socialism. It was a totalitarian dictatorship known as communism. It then switched over to a social democratic system and then a parliamentary democracy. But the building that I lived in was built by Soviet dictator Stalin. And the heat in the building was controlled by the state. They controlled it. The one and only phone company was controlled by the state, Chesky Telecom. It was not private back then. It was owned by the state. So if it was cold that day, you couldn't turn on the electricity and use the gas that you were billed for to heat your own home because the state wouldn't let you. Why? Because the state controlled when they turned on and off the gas. And they had a simple rule. If 3 days in a row went by and the temperature was below a certain degree, it was considered cold enough for them to justify turning on the heat so that you could turn on your radiator in your living room to heat your place. If the third day it was warmer, the meter would start over and you wouldn't get heat that third day, even if you had 2 cold days in a row. That is socialism. When you have countries like Venezuela, where the government controls sugar prices, food prices, water prices, electricity prices, oil, energy prices, that again is socialism. Now, unfortunately, people can misuse the term socialism today, and you can blame the young people for this because, I'm sorry, they're ignorant. They even can't do a good job defining many keywords, even though they use the internet and Google. It takes a lot of talent to not be able to find something on the internet when you're just trying to look up a word. Look at the word debunker. Okay, we've talked about that many times. Please look it up in any credible dictionary. Any dictionary will do. You'll see that the word debunker simply means to separate bunk or nonsense from facts. That's always a good thing. So, like decaffeinated coffee has no caffeine. The D means it's removed, like debunk, you're removing bunk from facts. Again, that's a good thing, separating fact and fiction. But if you listen to today's paranormal crowd, or especially the people who started this, like Stanton Friedman, debunkers have closed minds. Don't confuse me with facts. My mind is already made up. No, debunking by definition can't be that. But today, up means down, and sideways means, backwards. It's ridiculous. So the same is true with socialism. So what you have today is you have young people saying, even some politicians, even talking heads on MSNBC and other networks, attacking Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders is talking about being a socialist or talking about socialism. Well, he is and he is not. And it's partly his fault for not clarifying this, and he should. Again, he's not talking about changing the United States into a socialist country where the government, the U.S. government, runs all the choke points and everything that's important in the economy. He's not talking about that at all. He has never talked about doing that as far as I know. And if he has, I've asked his attackers to point out to me where he's done it, and I'll write a story about it because it should be exposed if he or anybody really feels that way. But as far as I know, he does not. What he is doing is saying that we should have health care as an option where the government is running healthcare. Okay, you can still keep your private plan if you want, but at least have a government option, a single payer option. Medicare, Medicaid for all, depending on how you want to implement it. He considers healthcare to be a universal human right. And I agree with that. It should be. I think that a country has the right, has a duty to its citizens to ensure that it is, as they are able to pursue, like the U.S. has in their written documents, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I do believe that healthcare is a universal human right. It belongs with free speech. It belongs up there with the right to own a firearm. I believe that they're all the same. In fact, I will tell you that when I lived in Europe, I enjoyed the healthcare that they have. It was very simple. It didn't matter what condition you had. It was irrelevant. Who cares? For $75 a month, everything was taken care of. That's it. Period. And $5 more, €5 more, you could get anything from the dentist fixed in any of the countries in Europe. It was great for only €5 more because, let's be blunt, good health care involves good dental care. You can't just have one and not the other. They're, dependent on each other. They're related. But yet, how many people have good dental care as part of good health care coverage? Very few. It's an exception. And it's pathetic that, good dental care suffers as part of good healthcare plans. So I believe that that type of system should be used. Everybody pays, say, $80 a month. That's it. Doesn't matter what you have. It's irrelevant. Everybody gets treated, gets cared, whatever. It works. And it shows over time that people get healthier. And it does work. And I think that's the way to do it. You don't have these co-payments, or if you do, it's a maximum of $5. It works, folks. I've seen it done. I've been a beneficiary of it. I highly recommend it. And unfortunately, as long as you've got Democrats and Republicans running the country into the ground, you're never going to see it. I don't know even if Sanders gets his way, how they're going to implement it, but I have no faith that they're going to do it properly. But it'll be better than what we have now. But what we have now really is nothing. So I guess something is better than nothing. And yes, it's reached the point where we have to lower our standards down that level to say that, yeah, something is better than nothing. And I've heard that from Obama supporters. If I had a dime for every one of them that said, well, Obamacare is better than nothing. Well, yeah, but I never said it wasn't better than nothing. Nothing is nothing. But do we really have to lower the bar that much to try to claim victory? How about we just do it the right way to begin with? That would be a nice, new, fresh, original concept. So I believe that Sanders' presence in the race is a good thing because it's shaking the Democratic Party to its core, and it needs to happen. The Democratic Party, in my view, is rotten, and the Republicans, I think, are rotten. And let's be honest, the U.S. is an oligarchy. We're not $23 trillion in debt because the money spent itself. No, these two parties have, just basically spent with abandon, and nobody seems to care. It's all good, It's funny, they both claim they're against big money in politics, but they love taking those big checks. In the case of Michael Bloomberg, let's be honest, the reason he is welcome at the debate table is because he, not coincidentally, gave the Democratic Party over $300,000 in donations, and suddenly he's earned a right to feed at the trough. And before that, they said they were against big money in politics. In fact, they had swore as a compromise to Bernie Sanders' people in exchange for not pursuing the fact that they cheated in 2016 against him when Hillary's people, stacked the deck. Well, they were supposed to not accept money from the fossil fuel industry. Well, you wouldn't know that today. They've reneged on their promise too. So what's happening is Sanders is freaking out the Democratic Party establishment, and that's a good thing. They actually may stage a brokered convention to try to stop him. That wouldn't be a good thing, but it would force the issue again to a head. Sanders wants to forgive student debt. He wants to make college and higher education free, junior college and four-year schools. I do support the idea of free education. I really do. Why should we charge people knowledge for knowledge? Why do we pay teachers so terribly when we put the future of our children in their hands? We trust them enough to teach them and educate them, right? But yet we pay them peanuts? What the hell is our problem? I've never understood it. I think policemen, ambulance workers, fire department, teachers, pilots, all these key people that run the infrastructure, that make society what it is, that, keep everything running as it should, things we depend on, they should be paid fair wages and, paid for the great jobs that they do, because without them, we don't have society. All right, we'll be back after this break.
Audience, if you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
Join Patty Conklin and Healing Within Radio each week. More than entertainment, Healing Within offers educational, useful tools for everyday life. Listen for help overcoming fear, anxiety, and depression. Patty knows about eliminating cancer, MS, dementia, Parkinson's, and a host of illnesses that we face every day. Life can be good. Life is good. All you need are simple tools to start changing your life. Start right now by visiting pattyconklin.com, PATTICONKLIN. No matter where you are in the world, you can work with Patty through Skype, phone, or in person, visiting one of her retreats in Georgia. Visit pattyconklin.com today or call our offices at 404-474-0086. That's pattyconklin.com or call 404-474-0086.
Coming soon to the X Zone Broadcast Network is A Different Perspective with me, Kevin Randall, as your host. We'll be taking a close look at what is happening in the world of UFOs today with side trips into the paranormal. Guests will range from those who are household names to those who have a different perspective on a variety of topics. No topic will be taboo, but there will be tough questions asked as we all search for the truth about UFOs, the paranormal, and those things that excite us. Sometimes we'll agree with a guest and sometimes we won't, but we'll try to keep the program topical. For those of you who would like to read, be sure to visit www.kevinrandall.blogspot.com and remember to listen to the other fine programs on the X Zone Broadcast Network at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back to the third segment here on Kal's Corner Radio Show on the X Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. So we talked about the election again for 2020. Again, I support Bernie Sanders getting the nomination. I think his presence in the race, since he's not a typical Democrat, if you will, he's an outsider. I think he's forced an issue or several issues to a head that the other candidates would not even be talking about today if it weren't for his presence in the race. I think that's a good thing. I think the Democratic Party needs to be shaken up. I think the Republican Party needs to be shaken up too. It cannot be and should not be just the party of Donald Trump. It should not. It should be a party that represents the values of Republicans as they claim they stand for, right or wrong. And then, of course, it should do the bidding of the majority of the American people, which, of course, it does not do. And that's why both of these parties, in my view, are at fault, because no other two parties have been in power. It's only them. And yet we're $23 trillion in debt, not because we're doing the right things. It's because we've done $23 trillion worth of wrong things. Let's be blunt. All right, so that's my view on the election coming up there. Let's talk about some of the other subjects that are going on. Right now in Russia, Vladimir Putin is getting ready to try to get the referendum passed, which will basically change the way that the Russian government structures itself. This will ensure that he basically becomes like China's dictator for life, except he'll be Russia's dictator for life. He can stay the dictator of Russia as long as he wants to in perpetuity, as long as he gets the way that the country is put together, constitutionally restructured, and with a rubber stamp parliament, he's expected to get his way. The question now becomes, what is the average Russian going to think about this? I'm not sure it really matters, meaning, of course, a lot of Russians are just going to tune out and not vote and not be part of this thing because there will be questions whether this is a straight-up referendum that's going to happen or not. On the other hand, what difference would it make even if they rose up and said they don't want to stand for this? What's going to happen to them? They can't win, and that's unfortunate. They can't win. And the same is true in Iran. Recently, they had elections, okay? And there are apologists for Iran who will say, see, democracy is alive and well in Tehran. Look at all those people who ran for office. We've got new representatives. Well, as usual, when people try to apologize for Iran, the truth is in the fine details, or in this case, it's just, percolating and oozing all over the top. Basically, in order to run for any position that's of any viable power in Iran, you have to be approved by the Council of Guardians. That's it. If you're not ideologically pure, spiritually pure, or they don't love you enough, whatever their criteria is, you're not going to get the nod to run for office. They'll disqualify you. So what happened in Iran is thousands of people applied to run for office. About 7,000 of them were disqualified. They weren't good enough, they weren't pure enough, they weren't radical enough. Insert your excuse. The point is, the people that really run Iran and are running it into the ground, the Ayatollahs, these people were too radical, so they weren't allowed to run. So the so-called reformists lost because they were not allowed to run and have any contests to see who would win. Instead, you got, again, more rubber stamp conservatives, people who are going to continue supporting terrorism in Iran, continue its radical ways, death to Israel, death to the United States, this is the big Satan, this is the little Satan, yada, yada, yada. We've heard it all before, nothing new, been there, done that. It's pathetic, it's sick, the world puts up with it, the UN tolerates it for no valid reason, but yet it just continues and things don't improve. So now they're suffering because of an outbreak of the coronavirus. In fact, senior members of the regime in Iran are dying because they've got the virus and they can't fix it. They can't cure these people. And of course, there's conspiracies already atalk, blaming Israel and Mossad for killing these people. They just need an excuse to blame Jews in Israel across the board because they engage in anti-Semitism. That's what they do. And speaking of Israel, there is an election that's going to happen again. Here we go again in the case of Israel. Netanyahu is trying to plumb together a thin majority so that he can move his government forward. He may actually pull it off this time because there's enough people who are boycotting the elections so that he may win by default. Not only that, because of an outbreak in Israel from the coronavirus, about 400,000 Israelis claim they're going to stay home and not vote. That's a huge number, considering the entire population of Israel is about 8 million people. Israel is about the size of the state of New Jersey. You do the math as far as the geographics go. Imagine 400,000 of those people not voting. That can sway the election for anybody, regardless of who's running. All right, as other things happen in Israel as well, you'll see, again, further progress being made between, let's say, I won't say, it's not reparations, it's basically a revisit of history. You're starting to see for the first time Arab countries come out and say, this Palestinian thing is not going to happen. We don't support this type of behavior, these suicide bombing attacks, acts of terrorism against Jews, acts of terrorism, period. It's wrong. So what we should do is work with Israel, or the enemy of my enemy is my friend, that ideology, and work together to try to stop terrorist mindsets. And that, of course, means suddenly going against the wishes of the terrorist group Hamas, Hezbollah, and, of course, what passes for the leadership of the Palestinian people, the Palestinian National Authority, and, of course, Hamas in Gaza. Now, what does all that mean? Well, to make a long story short, basically what's happening is countries like Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, they're all openly starting to say, including Morocco, that they have no issue with Israel anymore. Israel has a right to exist. It must move forward, and there must be a two-state solution. But it's really up to the Palestinians now to start growing up, figuring out what they want to be when they grow up, if ever, and get their act together. And then maybe one day they can join the so-called civilized world and move forward with a proposed two-state peace solution. On the other hand, until that happens, it's never going to happen, and Israel is moving on with its existence, which it has the right to do, and it should be focused on doing. It shouldn't hold up its existence just because the Palestinians are throwing a hissy fit. Now, when I say that, I'm not trying to talk down to them or make fun of them or anything like that. But I don't care where you stand on the issue of the Palestinians. Ask yourself a simple question. If aliens were to come down today and land in Gaza or land in Palestine, what would be the future state of Palestine, who's their leader? If they said, take me to your leader, who would it be? Well, would it be Abbas? He says he's the leader of the Palestinian people. In fact, he says he's the only recognized leader. Recognized. That doesn't mean you are the only leader. That's different. Now, Hamas says they're the legitimate government of the Palestinians in Gaza. See, there you go, folks. The fact is there's no single leader for the Palestinians. They don't have one. They can't even agree to disagree on who is the top dog there. They talk about forming a unity government, but it's all talk. And last year, Hamas tried to kill Abbas again. It wasn't the first time. It's not going to be the last time. And they're just waiting for him to die. He's in his 80s. He's not in good health. So that they can finish the job they started by taking over Gaza. They seized control there illegally, murdered hundreds of Palestinian National Authority people and personnel. Again, a lot of people don't talk about that. And once Abbas is not around, they'll just move in because who's going to stop them? Well, maybe Israel can stop them, but would they? I don't know. So the Palestinians, they have no peace plan because they can't even agree who their leader is. Who are you going to cut a peace deal with? If you try cutting a deal with Abbas, Hamas is just going to veto it. If you try cutting a deal with Hamas, Abbas isn't going to sign up to it because, hey, you're not talking to him. So it's a stalemate. It's a dead end. And it's their choice. Abbas has been in power for 14 years. He's in his 14th year of his 4th-year term in office. Do the math. It's complete fraud. He won't allow a viable successor. He and his billions that he's got stashed away, rather than spend it like it's supposed to be, to improve the lot of his people, what he claims are his people, the Palestinians, you never know it based on the way he doesn't provide for them. Same with the terrorist group Hamas. They take all that aid and they're too busy building rockets to kill Jews instead of improving the daily lives of the people that they lord over and abuse, the Palestinians. And this is exactly what's going on. Don't let anybody lie to you. Don't let anybody spin it. Don't let anybody say they're a victim. No, they're not. There's no victims when you deliberately do it to yourself. If I make a point to hurt myself, who's the victim? There's no victim there. I am making a point to hurt myself, so it's my fault. That's it. There's no victim. A victim is when you hurt somebody else. You're victimizing them. But when you're doing something stupid to yourself, let's call it what it is, doing something stupid to yourself. And that's what the Palestinians have done. They refuse to set up a viable leader. Good luck trying to cut a deal with any leader of the Palestinians because there is no single leadership. At least Israel, the people decide who is their leader. Hopefully it's going to happen soon. It'll either be Netanyahu or maybe Gantz, but at least it'll be settled one way or another. All right, after this commercial break, we're going to come back and wrap things up in the last segment, and we'll be back. Thank you.
If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide. They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by REL-MAR, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world, interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Memorable dynamic presentations are a not-so-secret weapon in the business world. Do you have a powerful message that must be shared, but you haven't found a way to deliver that message? Do you want to be known as a top public speaker who gets amazing results? Are you ready to create and deliver your powerful message? Thomas Hides can help you create and deliver your speech to get the results you desire. Visit iconquality.com.
Did you expect your business to flourish, but instead it plateaued or didn't get off the ground yet? Would you like to achieve massive goals and discover new sources of income within your business? When you're ready to experience that type of success with fast results, Cindy Hendricks is the business coach for you. Her work with entrepreneurs and business owners has been life-changing. To get you and your business where you want to be, go to imaginemoresuccess.com.
Has the fear of public speaking stalled your business or personal life? What would you give to develop and maintain supreme confidence? Have an invaluable private program to always perform at your best. Imagine how you would feel. You can have all that and so much more today with Thomas Hides' life-changing course called Number One Fear Unleashed. Visit numberonefear.com and be liberated from your fear of public speaking.
All right, welcome back to the fourth and final segment here on Cal's Corner Radio Show on the X Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. Now, I want to spend this last segment talking about the U.S. election and the parallels that a lot of you who listen to this show and listen to the X Zone Broadcast Network, you'll see that there's a parallel here in that, let's just call it polarization, okay? The other P. Now, think about this for a moment, because again, there are parallels in this polarization. Hopefully I won't trip over my P's as I try to say them. All right, let's talk about colors. If I say to you, my favorite color is blue, people say, okay, fine, whatever. And it's blue. And let's say that I'm talking to you and you tell me, well, my favorite color is red. Okay, fine, it's red. So we agree, your favorite color is red, mine is blue. I like blue, you like red. Okay, but we don't hate each other over the fact that I like blue, you like red. We disagree over what our favorite colors are. We disagree over why we may like them, but we're still friends. We can still joke about it, whatever. You can go buy red stuff, I'll buy blue stuff. Nothing changes, okay? We grow actually from that exchange. We learn about each other. I learn why you like red, you learn why I like blue. Fine. Now, take the issue of politics. It's not the same, even though it should be. Same principle, okay? The press is full of stories where some Trump supporter is wearing a Trump hat, and it may say MAGA, making America great again, or whatever slogan the Trump campaign is going to, use. Fine. They use slogans just like other people do. All right, fine. But you'll read reports where a person wearing a Trump supporter hat, MAGA, whatever, that person gets attacked. They get beat up. Maybe their hat gets stolen, gets ripped off their head. They get punched. The point is there is an act of violence committed against that person because they support Trump, and the person deciding to get violent thinks that they have the right, otherwise they wouldn't have done it, to get violent against somebody that they disagree with. And that is where the problem is. The problem is the person who thinks that they have the right to get violent just because this person supports Trump and they didn't. That doesn't mean you have the right to take a swing at somebody, but that is what's happening. It's also happening in the other direction. You've got the far right talking about, using racial slurs. Racism doesn't belong anywhere in anything that claims to be valid. In fact, I try to remind people that there is only one race, human. That's it. If somebody has different color skin, and everybody's skin color is different, that's just genetics and environment. I can tell you, having lived in different parts of the world, your skin does change colors. I've experienced it myself. Believe it or not, my skin got darker spending time in Nevada than it did years in India, even though the sun is stronger in India. Well, go figure. Tell my skin that. I can only tell you what happened to me. Doesn't mean it happens the same way to everybody. And so-called white people are about 5% of the world's population. Get used to it, folks. Most of the people in this world are of color. Well, that's just the way it is. Get over it. It's just genetics. Any other claim is racism. So I understand that there are people who say, well, there's the German race, the Aryan race, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Hispanics, the Indians, Latinos, whatever. But it's really, they're all just humans. And I think the sooner that we say there's just one race, the human race, and who cares what color their skin is, because that's just a detail, it's just genetics. I think if we made that leap and changed that mindset, I think it can only help things. It's not going to solve a lot of things, and I'm not saying it would. It's not a silver bullet, as they say, but it certainly isn't going to hurt if we start saying, there's only one race, human race. And I feel the same way about genders. We've talked about it before. Please don't tell me there's over 100 genders, because there's never going to be over 100 genders. You've run out of too many to dice and slice at that point. Basically, you've got male and female. It's binary. Deal with it. When I hear, and we've talked about it before, we did, I think, 2 or 3 episodes on this, a gender called transhuman, which means you're beyond human. Yeah, right. Well, good luck with that. As long as you're human, you can't be beyond human. You're human. So there's no trans anything. You're just not going to be beyond human because you're only human. Just deal with it. Again, it reminds me of the stupidity of, Billy Meyer cult followers who say that, Pleiadian hybrid children are being made. No, they're not. They're just people, and no DNA test in the world is going to show that they're hybrid anything, because they're just people. It's just a lie. And don't tell me it's true that there's hybrid children out there, Pleiadian human hybrids. No, not at all. In fact, you won't even find any Bigfoot DNA because it just isn't out there. Bigfoot apparently doesn't have DNA. That's a lot of very special talent there if you're a living form without DNA. Whew, that's pretty smart life form there. Don't know how they pulled it off, but people who believe in that stuff have to try to have it both ways. So what does all this have to do with polarization, binary, talk about debunking, talk about politics? It has to do with everything. We've reached the point where people, when they disagree, they want to get violent on you. And that used to be confined to what we call the fringe. But now it's become mainstream, and that's really pretty pathetic. It really is. I remember just seeing, after Bernie Sanders won the Nevada caucus, you had talking heads on the liberal, so-called progressive, tolerant media. You had people like Chris Matthews, a very famous guy. He, remember him years ago, he just talked about how Obama, watching him, gave him a thrill up his leg. Okay, whatever. Well, he was comparing Sanders, who's Jewish, to being Hitler and a Nazi. It just is ridiculous. When people compare Donald Trump to being a Nazi or like Hitler, it is pathetic and it's ridiculous. Trump cannot be like Hitler. He can't be a Nazi. He loves the Jews, therefore he disqualifies himself. His daughter's Jewish. His son-in-law is Jewish. He loves Israel, says it has a right to exist. Move the friggin' capital of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, where one can argue it does really belong. So it just doesn't fit, but yet people will stick this Hitler term and analogy and just pin you on it. And the moment that people start misusing basic terms like that, not only do they insult the real war dead and victims of Hitler's genocide and of World War II, but they're really insulting your intelligence by thinking you might actually be stupid enough to believe these analogies. And if you are, then I guess you've proven their theory that you are dumb enough to believe it, and then I just hope you don't go vote. That's my honest view. So, again, be aware of people who will say that Trump is Hitler, he's behaving like Hitler, he is Hitler, he's a dictator. No, he's not. You can vote him out of office anytime you want. That's one thing dictators you can't do. You can't vote them out of office. That's one of the reasons they're called dictators, all right? You can vote Trump out anytime you want. You've got until November this year to do it, folks. It's a date with destiny. If you want to vote him out, go for it. So he can't be a dictator because he's not, and he's not Hitler either, so stop doing that. Quit using and misusing the word debunker. It doesn't mean what people like Friedman and others have falsely claimed. Use your dictionary, folks. There's a reason that book exists. There's a reason these terms and concepts exist. If somebody wants to vote for Bernie Sanders, that doesn't mean he's a commie automatically, okay? Ask him if he's a communist, but start with yourself. Do you even know what a communist is? Probably not, at least based on what I've seen people use this attack on Sanders' proponents. They don't even know what communism is, and most of them can't even tell me what the Cold War was about and explain it properly. A lot of them weren't even alive then. Well, then don't talk about it if you don't know what you're talking about. So again, just because he wants universal health care does not mean he's a socialist. We used to call that concept responsible government. In fact, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a Democrat who created Social Security, there's the S word, he called it the New Deal. It was part of New Deal legislation, a new deal, a new agreement with the American people. Well, we need a new deal. We need a fresh new deal. We need a newer deal, one that can accommodate and adapt for the times of today. And one of them is absolutely universal health care. Another issue, too, is, of course, the cost of education. It has gone way through the roof. The means to repay it without having draconian terms just doesn't exist for a lot of people. There's the issue of paying people a better wage for some of the jobs that they do. I've never believed that a minimum wage job should be a livable wage. There's a difference between minimum wage and livable wage. They're distinctly different things, okay? Therefore, giving everybody $15 an hour to flip a burger is not going to solve a lot of the problems. But again, at least some of these issues need to be talked about, like cutting taxes for the middle class, or at least giving them more benefits from the economic changes that were made and not giving the rich the tax breaks that they got. I have a real problem with companies like Exxon and Amazon not paying any taxes. I think they should pay some taxes. Now, legally, if they can't, okay, fine. They did it legally. God bless them. Why do we have a system that lets them get away with paying no taxes? Why do we have subsidies for the communist Chinese government? They don't need the money. Let them pay for their own way. And why are we giving subsidies to oil companies? They've got the billions to continue exploring oil. It makes no sense to me. All right. We'll be back next week for another episode of Kal's Corner Radio here on the X Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. Thanks for joining me. We'll be back again next Friday. Take care.